Hey guys, Superhorrorbro Mike here, and in today's video, we return to Joey Drew Studios as we explain the story that unfolds within its inky depths. This is the story of Bendy and the Dark Revival Explained. The year is 1973, exactly 10 years after the tragic events of Bendy and the Ink Machine, where we experienced Henry's never-ending cycle of torment at the hands of his old business partner, Joey Drew. Joey had once run a successful self-named cartoon studio, Joey Drew Studios, from which many famous cartoon characters of the 1930s and 1940s had been created. These included Boris the Wolf, Alice Angel, the Butcher Gang, and of course that dancing demon Bendy himself. As we learn from the story that unfolded in Bendy and the Ink Machine, Joey Drew Studios eventually fell on hard times, and this led to its closure in 1948. However, this bankruptcy the studio faced wasn't simply born from the costs of animating cartoons, but rather from a sinister and inhumane partnership between Joey Drew and the Gent Corporation. With Gent's help, Joey used a new kind of ink known as thick ink, which flowed from a device known as the Ink Machine, to secretly trap souls of studio workers and rebirth them as living cartoon mascots. Though this process didn't work as planned, and instead bore out inky monstrosities such as the Goopy Searchers and barely human Lost Ones. Other experiments were more successful, such as Boris the Wolf and two versions of Alice. Joey's end goal was to open an amusement park that would draw people far and wide with its promise of living cartoon mascots. However, this nightmarish vision was never fully realised. The studio ran out of funds, and Joey ended up owing the Gent Corporation an unthinkable amount of money, and the doors were eventually closed for good. The dark secrets of the studio buried from public knowledge forever. Joey ended up as a washed-up recluse, vanishing from the public eye and living out his final days in a crummy apartment in downtown New York. However, as we see during the final moments of the original game, he kept hold of the Ink Machine for reasons unknown. We learn that Joey eventually died in 1971, but an old friend of Joey's, business tycoon Nathan Arch, didn't wish to see his legacy fade from the annals of history. Nathan purchased Joey's entire estate, including everything Bendy related, and planned a grand revival of the franchise at his newly founded animation studio, Archgate Pictures.
My old friend Joey knew the thrills of bringing characters to life, rest his soul. Maybe with a bit of elbow grease and a small cash investment, I can resurrect the past. The papers are signed, the animation staff is hired, Archgate Pictures is open for business. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Bendy and all his little cartoon friends now belong to me. I'll admit it's strange owning a dear friend's legacy, but I think Joey would be content knowing it's safely in my hands.
With Archgate Pictures, Nathan Arch planned to bring Joey Drew's cartoon creations to a new audience, and so hired a team of animators to help realise this dream. One of these animators was a young girl named Audrey, and it is here on a fateful stormy night that our story begins. Audrey is working late, the last animator in the building, as she races to meet a brutal deadline. She heads to the elevator for a much needed cup of coffee, but as she enters is startled by the studio janitor Wilson.
Wilson? You scared me to death.
I'm sorry, my dear. Didn't mean to frighten you. You're working late tonight. A pretty girl like you shouldn't be wandering around all by yourself. Mind if I step in?
Of course not.
Thank you, Audrey.
The elevator breaks down on the wrong floor, and so Wilson heads into a back room to fix it. Audrey finds herself wandering around an exhibit dedicated to the late Joey Drew. Throughout this historical archive, we see many familiar remnants from the old studio, including the Ink Machine itself. Though it appears some have been misplaced, as 6 pedestals are missing their memorabilia. While Wilson gets to work fixing up the elevator, he asks Audrey if she can locate and return these relics. These are a record, Bendy plush, Joey's autobiography, an inkwell, a spanner, and a gear. Once all of these items have been retrieved and placed upon their respective plinths, Wilson asks Audrey to flip a switch connected to the ink machine at the back of a room. Upon doing so, the creepy janitor's friendly demeanour transforms into something far more sinister. He grabs Audrey and the two are consumed by the ink now flowing from the machine.
Come find me, Audrey. Come find me, and I'll show you your purpose. I'll show you the truth.
This can't be real.
And now, we die.
What are you doing? Oh no!
When Audrey wakes, she is no longer inside the world she once knew. Instead, her surroundings resemble that of a monochromatic living cartoon. An inky message on the wall before her ominously reads, "Welcome home." But what does this mean? She then realises that she too has adopted a new inky form, her human appearance now more reminiscent of the cartoon characters she used to draw. As Audrey begins to explore, she discovers that this inky nightmare is a recreation of the long-forgotten Joey Drew Studios, now inhabited by all manner of inky monsters. These include lost ones, searchers, and even terrifying versions of the Butcher Gang, brought to life before her very eyes. She finds many notes and audio logs scattered about the halls of the studio, which explain its dark history. How Joey Drew was a tyrant who worked his employees into the ground, how the studio collaborated with a company known as Gent, and how it faced financial hardship along the way. There are also notes that refer to Wilson and speak of him as the man who banished the Ink Demon. Some notes seem more direct, as if purposely guiding Audrey through this inky world. They offer helpful hints and are mysteriously signed with the handle, "Your Best Pal." It isn't long before Audrey encounters a friendly face amongst the masses of unfriendly ones, a cartoon rendition of the beloved character Alice Angel.
Ugh, what is this horrible place?
Yeah, I remember my first day down here. I know, it's scary. But you're actually pretty lucky. The machine could have turned you into a searcher.
You mean that thing that attacked me?
No, that's a Piper. And he's part of a gang, so be careful.
I don't understand any of this. I can't think. It hurts.
You'll catch on pretty quickly, if you can stay alive.
Of course, we know this character to be called Allison, and she warns Audrey of a creature known as the Ink Demon, a monster who still rules over these halls despite Wilson's claims that he banished him away. Something doesn't quite add up here, as we remember from the story of the previous game that it was Henry Stein, an old friend of Joey Drew, who helped found the studio and create Bendy, who banished the Ink Demon during the final moments of the previous game after playing a film reel titled The End. Audrey presses on and makes her way inside the animation wing of the studio, where with Allison's guidance, she manages to acquire a weapon to defend herself in the form of this gent pipe. The pipe is lodged in the stomach of a deceased lost one who has been strung up for following the path of the Ink Demon. It seems all those drawn to walk with demons are harshly punished as a result, all at the behest of the mysterious Wilson. Weapon in hand, Audrey can finally fight back against the hordes of inky enemies standing in her way, but she also discovers she has gained new powers alongside her new form. The ability to sneak upon an enemy and banish them, consuming their life force and transforming it into healing energy. Audrey is no ordinary trapped soul within this world. She seems to possess a unique connection to it and draw power from her surroundings. Beyond the animation alley, Audrey finds a secret room where a familiar face is held prisoner. A living version of Bendy himself in his cute cartoon form. A far cry from the terrifying Ink Demon she has heard tales of. Audrey approaches Bendy and extends her hand in friendship, but in doing so inadvertently shocks baby Bendy with her dark powers, causing him to scurry away into the vents.
It's okay. See?
I'm your friend. I won't hurt you. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that would happen. I promise. I'm so sorry.
After this encounter with Cartoon Bendy, Audrey finally meets the real terror, the Ink Demon himself, who has evolved far beyond the form Henry encountered 10 years earlier. This twisted version of the Ink Demon has a voice, speaking to Audrey as he stalks her through the halls of the studio.
Who are you? Tell me your sweet name, that I may devour it.
The Ink Demon has the power to influence those born from the ink machine. He learns of a soul's secrets through the ink and then speaks to them, his voice turning one's mind to madness. Notes found throughout the studio speak of how this demon gives a lost soul purpose. While his words are lies, he has an intoxicating pull, an allure that many cannot resist. It seems the lost souls of Joey Drew Studios all seek out their purpose after being reborn into this inky realm. The reality is far darker. The Ink Demon uses his influence to lead the inhabitants of this world to their deaths, consuming them should they cross his path. Some are then reborn back into the studio in a new inky form, but others are less fortunate, becoming trapped between the real world and the ink world, ghosts of the machine. Audrey must now outwit the Ink Demon by taking refuge in vents and lockers whenever he is near. If she fails to reach a suitable hiding spot before the monster locates her, then she is forever consumed. Audrey's journey is long and hazardous, and along the way she encounters a few new friends. One such companion is a cheery, if goofy lost one named Porter. In return for lending Porter a helping hand, this quirky character bestows a useful new ability upon Audrey by connecting with her through the ink. The power to teleport short distances, which helps for both dodging enemies as well as reaching previously unreachable areas of the studio. There are new enemies abound too. The first of these is the fourth member of the Butcher Gang, previously unknown and with good reason. Her name is Carly, and she is a mischievous ghost who can appear out of thin air, charging down anyone who stands in her way. Carly was the design of an underappreciated artist by the name of Jane Todd, whose fellow artists mocked her creation and dismissed it. Jane then became set on bringing Carly to life and decided to approach Joey Drew to make this happen. This story echoes the fate of Susie Campbell in the previous Bendy game, the original voice actress for Alice Angel, who became obsessed with the character she portrayed on screen and eventually ended up as a research subject for Joey Drew, who trapped her soul within the ink machine and created a twisted version of Alice, whose imperfection led her to become lost in madness as she sought to become perfect. So could it be that Jane Todd ended up as the soul trapped inside Carly? Another experiment of a collaboration between Joey and the Gent Corporation. Maybe, but that's a theory for another video. After encountering Carly, Audrey finds her way to the studio elevators. Hoping they will lead her out of the studio and back to the outside world, she steps inside, but her ascent is soon interrupted by a mysterious voice.
Unauthorized service elevator in use. Manual lift ejection activated.
The elevator plunges into the deepest depths of the studio, where Audrey finds herself in the lair of yet another new enemy, a giant inky spider known as King Widow. The King Widow is another monstrous creature that has evolved from the ink, and it lays clusters of eggs all around its home at the bottom of the elevator shaft. These eggs hatch out mini widows, who bite and claw at Audrey as she desperately tries to open the exit and defeat the King Widow. After finally conquering the mighty arachnid terror, Audrey makes her way into the nearby sewer system, where she encounters Cartoon Bendy once again. However, after their shocking first encounter, the little fella isn't too trusting and scampers off once more. Audrey chases after him, but as she emerges into the sewer system, she is greeted not by Bendy, but instead an unexpected figure from the past.
I believe there's something special in all of us. Especially you, Audrey.
Who are you?
Don't you know me? Take a good look.
Aren't you?
Joey Drew? In the flesh. Well, so to speak. Come on up. Let's take a little walk.
Joey Drew lives on inside the ink machine, now in a cartoon form. He invites Audrey into the safety of his hideout, and on the way, explains a little about how the world inside the ink machine actually works. He claims this inky cartoon realm exists in parallel with the real world outside, though in this realm, time does not pass in a linear fashion. The world inside the ink machine is stuck in an endless cycle, a never-ending loop that repeats over and over. With each time it repeats, the world slowly begins to crumble and wear down. This is why we see messages around the studio stating that the machine must endure. It is also why surroundings seem far more unstable and broken than they did when Henry took his own journey 10 years earlier. Joey also explains that someone from the outside world is messing with the one inside the ink machine. This disruption has resulted in the appearance of dark entities emerging from the inky puddles. We know the man responsible for this disruption is Wilson. The worst of these creations are the Keepers, who have taken over the nearby Gent workshop. These Keepers have frozen the cycle in place and changed events, which is why Bendy has evolved and the studio become more deadly than ever before. Joey then explains Audrey's purpose. She is here to set things right and break the cycle.
You're here for a reason, Audrey. There's always a reason, even when you can't understand it.
You made this world. Why can't you fix it?
Because I'm not the man. I'm just the memory.
Joey fades away, revealing himself to be nothing more than a ghost of the machine, a memory born from the ink within. After this startling revelation, Audrey faces the inky depths of the sewers, where after defeating a high-ruling Lost One named Lord Amok, she takes the throne in his place. She can't sit on the throne for too long though, she has a mission to complete, and so heads up the ladder and surfaces in a train station overlooking a vast city, the City of Broken Dreams. Here Audrey finally catches up to baby Bendy and manages to win him over with some kind words.
I didn't mean to hurt you. And I really don't think you want to hurt me either, right? Good. Let's be friends then, okay? What do you say? You and me? Awesome. Maybe you can help me. I'm looking for the old Gent building. What's wrong? Is it a bad place? It's okay. I won't let anything happen to you. We'll go one step at a time. Just you and me. Let's see what we can find.
With their trust issues resolved for the time being, Audrey and Bendy head out onto the city streets and over to the Gent workshop that Joey pointed her toward. Unfortunately, their entry is denied and an ID card required. Bendy helps Audrey track down a note written by a Gent worker. This note guides them to a rundown hotel where the ID card has been left for safekeeping. As Audrey walks over to collect the card, she is approached by Joey Drew once more, who whisks her away to a familiar location where a memorable voice can be heard.
All right, Joey. I'm here. Let's see if we can find what you wanted me to see.
Audrey finds herself in the area of the studio where Henry first began his own cycle back in 1963. Though it now looks far more ruined, worn down by the many cycles this inky realm has had to endure over the years. Joey prompts Audrey to take a seat before a projector, and here he explains his history with Henry and Audrey's own origins. Joey had been a bitter man in life. Frustrated that his old business partner Henry Stein left the studio, Joey created the Ink Machine, alongside a version of Henry that he could trap inside its world and torment forevermore, within an endless cycle of misery. However, as the years went on, Joey found a guiding light, a voice actress at the studio named Alison Pendle, who took over the role of a character from Susie Campbell, befriended Joey and warmed his icy heart. Inspired by Alison, Joey created a version of her within the Ink Machine, a new version of Alice Angel that would help Henry on his path and bring him hope within his endless loop. After doing so, Joey decided to create something to help him find his own purpose in life, a daughter. This daughter was also born from the ink machine, and her name was Audrey. Although the road to creating Joey's perfect daughter was long and many failed experiments occurred along the way, we discover this knowledge in a note located further into the game. These failed versions of Audrey referred to Joey as Uncle, and one can be heard at the end of the original game.
Tell me another one, Uncle Joey.
You will also notice that the picture drawn by Henry, once found hanging in Joey's apartment, appears on the wall beside Audrey's desk in her office at Archgate Pictures, proving this connection to be genuine. Learning the truth that Joey is her father is too much for Audrey to handle.
I'm not listening to any more of your lies.
Remember who you are, Audrey.
Leave me alone.
With this revelation, Audrey returns to the present and collects up the ID card. But when she exits the hotel, Bendy is gone. Audrey heads back to the Gent workshop and manages to gain entry, but upon doing so, learns of another worrying revelation. As she makes her way to the front entrance, she is ambushed by the Ink Demon. But just as he is about to attack, electrical pylons spark to life and transform him into cartoon Bendy before her very eyes. The Ink Demon and Bendy are one and the same, dual personalities trapped inside one body that can transform in the blink of an eye. A balance of both good and evil, love and hatred. In a daze, Bendy wanders off into an inky passage in the wall, leaving Audrey to live to fight another day. The Gent workshop holds many dark secrets. It reveals just how twisted the Gent Corporation became in its pursuit of turning people into living cartoon creations via the power of the ink machine. An audio log explains how men from the street, down on their luck and living in poverty, were paid to become part of Gent's research and experimentation. Unbeknownst to these poor souls, this meant becoming imprisoned within the confines of a workshop and killed. Their bodies pushed down a chute into a location known as the Pit, where Gent would blend them with the ink and revive them in a new cartoon form, just as Wilson did to Audrey at the beginning of the game. We see bodies hidden under sheets throughout this creepy location, remnants of these experiments. While Joey Drew was working with the Gent Corporation, we hear tales of how they took over the studio like a parasite, filling its halls with their staff who were abusive towards the many studio employees toiling away on Joey's cartoons. The Gent Corporation became increasingly interested in Joey's idea of bringing cartoons to life, even building a tunnel between his studio and their newly founded workshop in order to better coordinate their experimentation. Accountant Grant Cohen even comments on how he believed Gent was bailing Joey out financially so these inhumane activities could continue amidst his bankruptcy. One scientist named Alan Gray continued to inquire about the ink machine after Joey's passing. The machine, now property of Nathan Arch, had made its way inside the Archgate Pictures building, and Mr. Gray visited on several occasions to keep tabs on it. Even after experiment had halted due to the closure of Joey Drew Studios, it seems Gent were thirsty to continue their terrible experiments. After leaving the workshop, Audrey reaches a grand industrial factory, where she finally encounters the creepy keepers that Joey warned her of back in the sewers. As Audrey approaches the factory, she is trapped in a room by the keepers, who appear on a set of giant monitors to interrogate her. When they discover she wishes to speak to Wilson, they deem her hazardous and attempt to kill her with toxic gas.
Please let me see us.
Subject has been deemed hazardous. Toxic fumes activated.
Audrey manages to smash open a duct and quickly escape into the vent system, making her way stealthily inside the factory. The Keepers are mechanical banshees created by Wilson to govern and keep order within this altered version of the Inky realm. He drew them into reality and gave them life, but they have made things much worse. So how did this occur? Well, from notes and audio logs picked up around the studio, we learn a little bit more about Wilson's story. Wilson was a worker at Archgate Pictures, who was working on the delivery dock one morning when the ink machine was delivered from Joey Drew Studios. While most of the staff had no idea of the ink machine's purpose, thinking it to simply be a cool looking contraption from Joey Drew Studios' past, Wilson instantly knew it held many dark secrets. Wilson never fit in around the studio. He was outcast and ignored by his co-workers for his unusual appearance. But Wilson used their cruel judgments to his own advantage. Due to his appearance, he could become anyone, a producer, an artist, or even a lowly janitor, fitting in like a chameleon around the studio. His original role at Archgate is unclear, though it is suggested that he may have been an artist himself at one point. His janitor role gave him access to the Archgate building after hours, and access to every room as it was his duty to clean up the place. And so Wilson secretly conducted his own experiments with the ink machine and that very special ink every night after hours. This led to him finding a way to remold the inky world how he saw fit. This began with the capture of the Ink Demon. After Bendy had been imprisoned by the Keepers, Wilson tasked them with terminating him. However, this termination did not work, as Bendy was far too resilient, and so a series of torturous experiments were carried out that inflicted great pain and suffering upon the poor creature.
Keepers have administered quarter-hourly sessions of physical tortures and surgical invasions to wear down his powers.
With no way to destroy the Ink Demon, the Keepers came up with an alternate solution. They created a new inky form for Bendy, one that resembled his cute and mischievous guise from the cartoons. The murderous Ink Demon was placed inside this new form, which seemed to bring out Bendy's good side, especially when shown affection from others. However, the Ink Demon's evil side had grown more vengeful and hateful than ever before as a result of the pain and torture he was put through at Wilson's hand. He gained a higher level of intelligence too, evolving over the many cycles to the point where he could finally talk and influence others through the ink. It is unclear why Bendy switches between these two forms, but he seems to have a dual personality and, depending on his current mood, alters between the two, almost like an Incredible Hulk style concept. The electrical pylons seen earlier keep the demon away from Wilson's factory and the Keepers who tortured him. As long as these pylons are active, Wilson can hide away in safety, claiming that he banished the Ink Demon so that other souls lost within this inky world will feel he is protecting them and therefore do his bidding. Though it seems many of the studio's inky denizens despise Wilson and fear his influence over their inky habitat. After Audrey discovers the truth behind the Keepers and their experiments, she reaches the darkest depths of the factory and a room with the sign Cycle Breakers hanging above. However, she is locked out of this area and is approached by a childlike lost one who offers to grant her access if she indulges her in a game of hide and seek.
Find me and I'll open the door for you. I promise. Look away while I hide and no peeking.
This lost one is known as Heidi, and she may be one of the failed versions of Audrey that Joey Drew tried to create when using the ink machine to birth a daughter of his own, one of the little girls that referred to him as Uncle Joey. This would explain her childlike voice and mannerisms. Audrey finds Heidi and in return is given a new power, the ability to travel through the inky pipes around the studio with ease. She is also granted access to the Cycle Breaker room. This ominous area is full of prison cells, each housing characters familiar to anyone with knowledge of Henry's original journey through the studio. There's Norman Polk the projectionist, Sammy Lawrence who celebrated and praised the Ink Demon, and Bertram Piedmont the frustrated architect behind Bendyland, though the cell containing Alice Angel is oddly empty. Wilson feared these characters as they all had major impacts on the previous cycle and therefore the knowledge of how to break it. As Wilson and the Keepers had frozen the cycle in place, they do not wish for it to be tampered with by these cycle breakers. Of course, the one person responsible for resetting the cycle each time is Henry, and lo and behold, Audrey finds him locked away here too.
My name is Henry.
Have you been a prisoner long?
The Keepers think you're a threat to their plans. forever. I'm what they call a cycle breaker. Once upon a time, I knew how to start the cycle over. And when that happens, everything begins again. Completely new. Obviously, Wilson and the Keepers don't want that to happen.
Henry tells Audrey that the ink demon is the key to resetting the cycle and restoring the studio to its original form. In order to do this, Audrey must complete the same mission as Henry once did: play Bendy a reel of film labelled The End. The film reel is located deep within Wilson's retreat, so Audrey leaves Henry in the confines of his cell and pushes on. It isn't long before she is captured by a keeper and put to sleep. When she wakes, Audrey finds herself on a train heading to Wilson's hideout. Wilson sits before her and explains why he forced Audrey into this world.
There's nothing to fear as long as I'm with you. You're safe now.
You did this to me. You brought me here. Turned me into this thing. This doesn't make sense. I've never done anything to you.
Open your eyes and look around you. None of this makes sense. Drawn walls, nightmarish creatures, an ancient studio that died out almost 30 years ago. It's all fiction, utter nonsense. And yet, in here, it exists.
Wilson tells us that while the world inside the ink machine is fictitious, anything created within can then be born into reality. This was always Joey's plan, to create living cartoons inside the ink machine and then birth them into reality. A vision he realised in part with the birth of Audrey. Wilson also tells Audrey that he needs to help her save his father's life, and so she agrees to hear him out and follow him into the retreat. Here, the Keepers strip her of her weapons and, using the electrical pylons, subdue her supernatural powers. She then follows Wilson into his mansion, where he introduces her to a mechanical, doll-like figure named Betty.
A quick rest will do you good. Betty will show you to your room. She's my housekeeper, among other things.
You never actually killed the ink demon, did you?
No. He's too powerful to destroy, so we sealed him away, trapped him in a different form, one that was smaller, harmless.
Bendy.
It was a fitting prison, although he seems to have found a way to free himself. But enough talk. We'll deal with that soon enough.
There's some nice fresh blankets all laid out for you. You'll be dreaming in no time.
Wait, Wilson? One more thing. If you needed my help, why didn't you just ask?
Would you have believed me?
Come along, and no more dawdling. This way now.
Betty is Wilson's housekeeper and shows Audrey to her room. She seems friendly and puts Audrey's mind at ease about Wilson. He seems to look after all those that live here, and this kindness plants seeds of doubt in Audrey's mind. She begins to think that maybe Wilson's intentions are good after all. Betty prepares a sleeping remedy to help Audrey get some rest, but after drinking the potent concoction, Alice Angel breaks into Audrey's room and kidnaps her. When Audrey wakes up, she is strapped to an electric chair in the north wing, an off-limits area of Wilson's retreat where nobody dares venture. Alice is throwing a dinner party in Audrey's honour, but her intentions are not heavenly. Instead, Alice wishes to toy with and torture Audrey, consuming her heart in her continued pursuit to become perfect.
But for now, let's have fun. Plenty of time for a bloodbath later. Ooh, how about a game? Let's all play a game of riddles.
Riddles? What a wonderful idea!
Audrey is tasked with completing a puzzle which involves lining up various animal pictures in the correct order, and then pulling a lever to power up the electric chair. She gains hints as to the correct order from Alice's dinner guests, who are bound to chairs around the table. If Audrey guesses the correct order, then the dinner guests fry. If not, she will cook instead. After correctly lining up the pictures, the guests are electrocuted, freeing Audrey and sending Alice Angel into a vengeful wrath. She loads up a Tommy gun and proceeds to try and shoot Audrey as she makes her way through the north wing. Eventually, Audrey manages to outflank Alice and knock her from her post on the balcony. The two fall to the floor and begin to fight it out, but just as Audrey seems bested, a cutlass is thrust through Alice's chest and Audrey is saved by a friend from the past.
My face. You have my face. It's our face. I'm beautiful.
Always were.
Once again, good Alice intervenes and saves Audrey from evil Alice, just as she did for Henry in the story of Bendy and the Ink Machine. Because Alice escaped from her cell inside the Cycle Breaker prison, an opportunity reopened for the cycle to continue, which is exactly what Wilson was trying to avoid. Audrey gives a name to good Alice, the title we all know her by, Allison.
The machine creates many of the same forms, at least on the outside. On the inside, we're all pretty different.
Well, from now on, I'm gonna call you something other than Alice. It just doesn't suit you.
Oh? What do you have in mind?
How about Allison?
It's not bad. Okay, I'll try it out. But only if you can tell me what in heaven's name you're doing in Wilson's retreat.
We also learn that Allison felt sorry for Alice and has been trying to look out for her, writing her secret messages to try and bring out the good within her. She felt sorry for the fallen angel and her misguided mission to become perfect. Alas, the cycle always ends the same way, with Alice dying by Allison's hand while protecting the story's protagonist. Allison also brings along a familiar face, Tom, a version of Boris with a mechanical arm who acts as her partner in crime. The two promise to assemble an army to fight back against the Ink Demon, while Audrey heads to Wilson's laboratory to hear out his master plan. And so we come to the end of Audrey's adventure as she faces Wilson in his laboratory. The journey to the lab is strange to say the least. It appears Wilson has managed to channel colour into this world, running it through a series of pipes and into the laboratory. Wilson explains that in order to destroy Bendy, they must create a successor to him, an entity even more powerful that can act as a god to rule over this world. To do this, Wilson created a character of his own, a sailor character named Ship Ahoy Dudley. However, this character would need a soul, and Wilson has decided that Audrey, with her connection to the machine and powerful abilities, will be the perfect fit.
It could work, but it sounds risky. How will we control him? We don't want to repeat Joey's mistake.
No, we don't. All of the factors must be perfect. The right design, the right science, and the right soul. What? At last your purpose is revealed, Audrey. This is why you're here. With your soul inside him, my creation will live forever.
Stay away from me.
Wilson also reveals that he is in fact the son of Nathan Arch, explaining that he resented his father, who never showed him any kind of love or encouragement, as he didn't live up to the business tycoon's high expectations. Wilson grabs Audrey and pulls her towards his splicing machine, but she fights back and manages to push him into the mass of saws and blades, shredding his body to ribbons and entrapping his soul within the Dudley design. In the next room, Audrey locates the ink machine and powers it up. This brings Ship Ahoy Dudley to life, who then proceeds to try and kill her. Fighting back, Audrey almost manages to destroy Wilson and his monstrous creation after a long fought battle to the death, but is grabbed at the last minute. Her legs ripped from her body, she begins to bleed out into an inky puddle on the floor. Just as it seems all is lost, the Ink Demon attacks Wilson and tears out his throat, managing to make his way into the lab as Audrey had shut down the electrical pylons. He then approaches Audrey as she breathes her last breath and offers her a way to survive by merging with him and becoming a singular entity. Audrey takes Bendy's hand and merges with the Ink Demon, creating the monster Beast Bendy, the final form the demon took when facing off against Henry during his cycle. Joey Drew then materializes before them and tries to reason with Audrey. He tells her to fight the darkness and take control, but before she can, he falls victim to the wrath of the Ink Demon.
Starting over.
This is the end.
Seeing her father destroyed before her very eyes awakens something within Audrey, giving her the drive to fight the darkness and take control of her host body. She overpowers Beast Bendy from within and uses him to mow down the Inky army of lost ones who follow him. As she bounds through the halls of the studio, a collection of familiar faces return to help her along the way. Allison, Tom, Porter, and even Henry all show up to open up doors and guide Audrey to the projector room, where the film reel, The End, can be played to Beast Bendy, and in doing so, resets the cycle once more. This undoing all of Wilson's corruption and returning things to their original state. We then return to Archgate Pictures, where Audrey is once again in her human form, though she now knows of her cartoon origins, and her body literally bends just like the rubber hose cartoons she used to draw. By breaking Wilson's cycle, Audrey has been freed, and now she is able to rule over the world inside the ink, making it a better place for all of the lost souls trapped within. And in one final twist, her merging with the Ink Demon allowed her to do something miraculous, to bring Cartoon Bendy into the real world alongside her. Separated from his evil side, Bendy finally exists as a force of good, shedding his dark past and finding light within a new friend. Audrey has achieved what her father Joey had always hoped to. She brought a cartoon to life. But as the credits roll, we experience a wrinkle in this happy ending. The Gent Corporation, likely led by Alan Gray, steal away the ink machine under the cover of darkness and transport it to their workshop. This hints at a setup for a third game, where Audrey and Bendy will have to work together in the real world to stop Gent and save those still trapped within the inky depths of the machine. And with that, we come to the end of this look at the story of Bendy and the Dark Revival. There's many elements of this story still to cover in detail, and plenty of plot points to theorise over, but for now I hope you enjoyed this look at the surface level story and found it both entertaining and informative. If you did, remember to leave a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for more horror related content. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.